why children are born with birthmarks, but I obviously was born with the birthmark. There's more up here. And we literally see people commenting, that's not a birthmark. I was born with this birthmark. I have baby photos of the day I was born, and I have this mark. It's the exact same shape. It's just bigger now because I'm bigger. Not that that's important, but I just think it's worth pointing out that we live in this crazy world where even when you say, hey, this is a birthmark, somebody's got to trot along and sort of question what you're saying. And the nature of the post that I made was, I was searching around on Instagram, as you do when you're bored on tour, and I came across a beautiful young woman, and my first reaction was, I thought she was doing some kind of Instagram, TikTok type of thing with some kind of makeup. So I stopped and I looked, and it took me a hot second to realize, and then when I read her caption, she said that she's got a birthmark on her face. Her name is Carlotta from Italy. And but her birthmark is kind of a blue-silver. And she's a model. And so I was sort of struck by how not only had she embraced her birthmark, but that we now live in a world where what used to be something that would disqualify her from being a model now is something that people are embracing. And she's certainly very beautiful, so I'm not saying she wouldn't be a model. I don't think it's one of those things. I think it's now people are really expanding the standard of what's beautiful. So having grown up, born in 1967, never in a million years was I told that something like this was beautiful or could be additive to who I was. It was always posited as a negative. I've been asked thousands of times, and oftentimes very rudely, do you have a disease? What the hell's wrong with you? When it's really cold in Chicago, the birthmark turns dark purple. So people literally walk up and say, I think you should go to the hospital. Are you a burn victim? Does it hurt? And so when you're young, and as anyone would understand, anything that separates you from pack is painful. And so from my earliest memories, people were making fun of me, teasing me, and adding all sorts of ideas to what my birthmark represented. And what's even crazier, on the list of things that you can be challenged with in life, a birthmark is very, very low on the scale of something you have to navigate, because there's no pain, there's no loss of function. Obviously, I'm a professional musician. I play guitar with this hand, as you might know. And but I found myself, even today, if I sit, I'm obviously, for the sake of the camera, even today when I sit, I'll put my right hand over my left hand to cover my hand. I don't wear often short sleeve shirts. You'll find very few photos of me where you can see my birthmark quite clearly. I learned to sit like this so that people wouldn't see my birthmark. I'm left-handed, so my natural thing should be to sit like this. I forced myself to sit like this so people couldn't see. I remember getting a crush on someone when I was like 15 years old, and I would literally hide my birthmark, hoping they would like me before they would know I had a birthmark, because as far as I was concerned, the birthmark was disqualifying in that. So back to this young woman and her post, I found myself thinking, wow, I'm 57 years old, and here's this beautiful young woman who's absolutely embraced this part of her being, and here I am at 57, I still haven't embraced it, which is kind of crazy. Now, I did do an album where I showed my birthmark on the cover, but even today, I'm still not totally comfortable with it. So I just, in a spur of a moment, sort of shared my feelings, inspired by this young woman. Never in a million years did I think what I said about it would go viral. Certainly she got brought into the story as well. I've since communicated with her, and she wrote a very nice note. So thankfully it wasn't a negative for her as well, because I wouldn't want her to feel I was sort of putting her in a situation that she didn't ask for. But just to finish up the message, it's amazing that something that has always been in my mind a negative, in this case not only became a positive in terms of sort of my journey to sort of embrace some part of myself I've always been comfortable with, but now I'm getting tons of messages from people who have birthmarks or have children with birthmarks saying, thank you, that's the kind of positive affirmation that we need in this culture. And again, I grew up with a special needs brother. So I always had that perspective that no matter what I was facing, my brother was facing something 20, 30 times more challenging than myself. So I've always been reluctant to talk about it because, again, there are people who have much more challenging situations. And but at the same time, I think it's cool that just for something that in our modern parlance you would call organic, I just felt inspired in that moment to write about it, and now here it became something that people sort of rallied around. And I'm at a point where I don't need the positive affirmation. It's nice, but if it's the type of thing that maybe would make other young people in particular feel comfortable, that makes me feel good. So I hope that sort of illustrates a little bit of where that all came from. It certainly was unexpected for me. And, last thing I'll say, when you're a parent, I guess even heck, when you're an adult, you never stop learning. And so I learned a little bit of something this week about myself and about the world. And as I said in the beginning of my post, I'm not the biggest fan of all woke-ish things. I find a lot of it sort of imposing, and I can understand why people would agree or disagree with that. I know it's a contentious subject, certainly in American culture. But I do think that in the last 10 to 15 years, the body positive movement, which is, I guess, our body positivity movement, I think has been fantastic. I love seeing people of all backgrounds, all shapes and sizes being celebrated for who they are. I think that's super great. And it's very much, if you can imagine, coming out of DIY culture, that's kind of what we embraced all the way back in the 80s. That's what punk rock was for. That's what post-punk was about, was just embracing with who you are. And yet, after all these years of being called a weirdo and all these things, I'm still working towards fully embracing the way that God made me. So